Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who rule as well. Peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Aina. The title of this video is the Correlation of the Willing is a Cry for Help. Right? And basically, Babylon the Great has forborne to fight. And we see that happening now with them using different tactics to beat their enemies instead of just going to war. Underhanded means, trying to do regime changes by pushing the population of a certain place to overthrow their government, right? Or using proxy wars to fight their battles, right? And mainly that's against, Iran and Russia and China in these last days, with America using Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, But anyway, we also have this coalition of the willing, right, which revolves around the UK, France, whatnot, and them guys, UK, basically supplying weapons to Ukraine, to fight against Russia, right? And ultimately, America is trying their best to stay away from this, and now they're basically pushing everything towards UK, as in they're split. They try to say they're split. We're not really joined. UK is doing their own thing. That's why you had Donald Trump at the beginning saying he's with Russia. It was Zelensky that started the war, and he doesn't know what the UK is doing, or Europe is doing, basically trying to help Ukraine. But now we see that his plan basically failed, and now he's starting back to try to help Ukraine, with these missiles that he's supplying them. But basically, the point is that they started this coalition of the willing because America, Babylon the Great, has forborne to fight. They don't want to outright just go to war, and that's why you also seen them hit Iran with those missiles for Israel, and then immediately said peace. They don't want to have a full out blown war. Okay.
Australia, the UK and France are among some nations that could be sending troops to Ukraine, but not to fight. So here's the plan. The UK and France have been leading a proposal to ensure that there's lasting peace in Ukraine should there be a ceasefire. The idea is to create a coalition of the willing. This would mean planes in the air and boots on the ground in Ukrainian-held territory to deter Russian attacks. Defence chiefs from more than 30 countries, including Australia, Turkey and Japan, have met to discuss the plan. So far, it's not clear how many troops would be needed, what countries will be involved, or what powers such soldiers would have. But Australia's Prime Minister says he is open to sending troops to support the peacekeeping efforts. But such multinational peacekeeping efforts are often mandated by the UN Security Council, and Russia has veto power there. The Kremlin says it will not tolerate Western forces on the ground in Ukraine.
If Russia was to consider that these foreign forces were entering Ukraine alongside Ukrainian forces and exercising a right of what's called collective self-defense, those foreign forces could then become legitimate combatants as far as Russia was concerned.
In 2003, there was a coalition of the willing, which involved dozens of countries to help the US during its invasion of Iraq. While nothing has been set in stone, there is a plan in motion, meaning Australia, the UK and...
Right, she says a plan in motion, but ultimately it's the plan of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, right? He's gathering these nations. So if they did choose to go out there to that land, they'll just be ready for, World War III by moving their troops closer and closer to, the Levant region. This is Joel 3:1. It says, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat." So this was going to be taking place at the same time where the Israelites are, joining back to their power, right? And knowing who they are. And at the same time, Yahweh is going to be gathering the nations for battle. And we see that happening. All right, ever since the truth sprung out around the 1960s, 1970s, America was going at it with Iraq. right? And pretty much that was their whole plan, or so they thought it was their plan to conquer that region. You know, you had Iraq, Syria, you know, Iran. That whole area was the plan of the global elites, right? But it really was the Most High Yahweh drawing them to the battle. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. See, so this was the plan of Yahweh. So even if they did choose to do that, it would be the plan of Yahweh, but it seems like Russia is not allowing them. But anyway, like I was saying, this is Babylon, you know, trying to not fight, but still win the battle. This is Jeremiah 51:25 says, behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, said the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, which destroyeth all the earth. And I will stretch out my hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. And they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundation, but thou shalt be desolate forever, said the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Right? This is how we know that this is talking about America, Babylon the Great, because they will be desolate forever, right? And never inhabited. There will be nothing here. It says, set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her. Call together against her the kingdoms of Ariat, Minia, and Ashkenaz, which is Germany, Armenia, and Turkey, right? It says, appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up as the rough calipers. It says, prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, and this is going to Russia. And we see that happening here in these last days. It says the captains, mind you, like I said, when the truth came out around the 1960s, 1970s, they was focused on Iraq, right? And now here, the end has manifest, and the Medes have come into play, which is Russia. It says, prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble in sorrow for every purpose. See, this is the Lord's purpose. This is his plan. It says, for every purpose of the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, shall be performed against Babylon, which is America, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. It says, the mighty men of Babylon have been born to fight. They have remained in their holes. Their might have failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. Right? And pretty much, let me grab this other scripture. You know, that Trump and, you know, all his people are seeing this pretty much. Hold on, let me grab this. All right. Yeah, so Trump and his whole cabinet and all the people in America understand what they're going against. And that's why you have a lot of these veterans, you know, these guys like Scott Riddler, Conor McGregor, right? Slakia for not pronouncing your names correctly. But those guys that we know and we watch through these podcasts, they say things like, you know, this is something that America cannot do, right? So Jeremiah 50:41, it says, behold, a people shall come from the north, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coast of the earth. It says, they shall hold the bow and the lance, they are cruel, and will not show mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses, everyone put in array like a man to the battle against the daughter of Babylon. It says, the king of Babylon have heard the report of them, and his hands wax feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs of a woman in travail. I'm sorry, and pangs as a woman in travail. Right, and pretty much Russia has the most nuclear missiles in the world right now. And also they have the one new missile they brought out, the Oceanic missile, right, which struck Ukraine in a devastating blow. You know, it was so great. All the people, all the experts that go into those type of things were saying, you know, this is something the world has not seen yet, right? And Russia possessed this type of technology, right? And America knows that. They don't really want war, and that's why Trump was talking about being denuclearized. Right, he really didn't want to attack Iran, but because of his backers, the JOOs like the Rothschilds, the banking elites who run and control the world and and control the money, right? The different banking families, this is something that they want, right? And they don't even live in America. Trump did not want this, okay, but he had no choice. So he was kind of afraid. That's why he struck Iran immediately and called for peace. you know. Okay. So once again, Jeremiah 51 and 30, the mighty men of Babylon have been born to fight. They have remained in their holes. Their might have failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. This is I'll just start Nahum chapter 3, verse 11. It says, thou also shalt be drunken. This is talking about America, Babylon the Great. It says, thou also shalt be drunken. Thou shalt be hid. Thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. So once again, going to the scripture I just brought up in Jeremiah 50, America has heard a report of their enemies and how great they is. You see Trump talking all the time about China. You know, China's way ahead, right? That's why they have this big, beautiful bill, and in it, you know, along with all the other stuff they have in there, which is complete wickedness for America, basically, because it's going to bring America to its knees. Also, they have this AI bill in there where, you know, the states cannot control how, you know, the government governs the AI thing for like 10 years. So that's them also, you know, seeking strength, thinking this AI technology will save them from what's to come, right? It says in verse 12, all thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs. If they be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thine enemies. The fire shall devour thy bars. See? So pretty much they're afraid. America's afraid, you know, of pushing forward. They want what they want, as in their new agendas and things like that, but they don't want war. They just want peace, or they just want their enemies to just listen to them, you know. Grab Isaiah 47. And yeah, you know, that's pretty much all I had about this coalition of the willing. Basically, America, you know, forborn to fight and pushing things off towards the Europe, you know. It says, sort of 8, Isaiah 47:8. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pledge, that dwellest carelessly, that saith in thine heart, I am and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. It shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. Thou shalt, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Right? This is talking about America, Babylon the Great. And we can see that they're going through, you know, complete hell. Especially if you look at the president, you know, who's running the country right now, he's, you know, everywhere he looks, there's a problem. You know, even this Epstein list, you know, which is haunting him. You know, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. They brought up the Epstein list, and this man said, why are you talking about this? What about the floods in Texas, you know? So he doesn't want anything to do with, you know, the current problems that is in front of America, you know, pretty much. A lot of times they ask a question about, you know, certain thing that's going on. He's like, I don't know. You have to ask this person or that person, you know, because there's so much going on. It says, stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be, thou shalt be able to profit. If so be, thou mayest prevail. It says, thou art weary in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee, right? These are different soothsayers, these people that read the moons, you know, the left-hand sources, witches, and things like that. Pursuant to Isaiah 19, these are the things that they're seeking to. It says, behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor a fire to sit before it, right? So, you know, these missiles are going to destroy everything, and they know this. It says, NLT, but they are like straw burning in a fire. They cannot save themselves from the flame. You will get no help from them at all. Their hearth is no place to sit for warmth, right? So, you know, America trying to confide in these different people that they've been confining in since the beginning of time is no longer going to work. says, thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. So pretty much the purpose of the Lord will be performed, right? And America will go to war, you know, and be destroyed. So, you know, that's all I had. Lord willing, edify from the lesson. Shalom to those elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.